The research ship Starlight Heron floated silently in the dark of space. In front of it was the reason for their long, difficult journey. It was a massive structure, a tangled knot of metal and light the size of a small moon. This was the Nexus. No one knew who built it. The civilization that created it had vanished millions of years ago, leaving only this silent giant station behind. For 3 standard cycles, the crew of the Starlight Heron had tried to get inside. And for 3 cycles, they had failed. The leader of the science team was a woman named Mirai. She was a xenoarchaeologist, a scientist who studied alien ruins. She had spent her whole life dreaming of a find like this. Now it was right in front of her, but it was locked away. She stood on the bridge of the ship, her face lit by the soft blue light of the main screen. On the screen was a close-up view of the problem. The problem was a machine. They called it the Sentinel. It stood guard before the station's main entrance, a huge doorway that had never opened. The Sentinel was taller than most buildings, a figure made of a material that looked like polished black stone. It had 4 long, powerful arms and legs that were rooted to the station's hull. It did not move. It did not speak. It simply stood there, a silent guardian. Every time they tried to get close, the Sentinel would wake up. A shimmering wall of energy would appear in front of it, blocking their path. At the same time, a single, powerful thought would slam into the minds of everyone on the ship. It was not a sound, but a clear, undeniable idea. Access denied. They had tried everything. Mirai had tried sending messages of peace. She used every known language, even mathematical codes and the universal constants of physics. The answer was always the same. Access denied. The ship's captain, a man named Day, had tried more direct methods. They had used cutting lasers and powerful sonic drills. The Sentinel's energy shield absorbed it all without a flicker. Nothing worked. The Sentinel was a perfect lock, and they did not have the key. Captain Day was a practical man, not used to failure. He watched the screen from his command chair, his hands clenched into fists. "Nothing," he said, his voice loud in the quiet bridge. "The last resonance pulse should have worked. It works on every other alien tech we've found. Why not this one?" Mirai sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's different, Captain. It's older and smarter. It doesn't just see our tools. It sees our intent. It knows we are strangers. It knows we are not the ones who built it. To the Sentinel, we are just pests buzzing at a window." On the other side of the bridge, a young communications officer named Sue flinched. He was the one who had to listen to the silence from the station. He was the one who felt the psychic access denied most strongly. It was starting to give him headaches. "It's so cold," he said softly. "There's no anger in the message. No hate, it's just a fact. We are denied. Like a computer stating a simple rule." While the senior officers debated on the bridge, a man named Jin was deep inside the ship. He was not a scientist or a captain. He was a maintenance technician. His world was one of wires, conduits, and the low hum of the ship's engines. Right now, he was floating in a narrow service conduit near the cargo bay, replacing a faulty power relay. His tool belt was strapped to his waist, and he was humming an old song to himself. He had heard the reports from the bridge. He knew they were stuck. But where others saw an impossible problem, Jin saw a machine. A very big, very old, and very complicated machine, but a machine nonetheless. Later in the ship's mess hall, the talk was all about the Sentinel. "It's a god," one of the engineers was saying. "You can't reason with a god. You can only hope it ignores you." Jin sat quietly, eating his meal. He was listening. Mirai was there too, looking tired. "It's not a god," she said. "It's a program. A set of instructions written long ago. We just haven't figured out the right question to ask." Jin finished his food and went to his small workshop. He pulled up the external sensor logs on his terminal. He wasn't interested in the big energy shields or the psychic messages. He was looking for something smaller. He scanned through hours of data, watching the readings from the Sentinel's surface. Most people looked for attacks or power surges. Jin looked for rhythms. He looked for tiny changes, the kind of things a machine does without thinking. He noticed that the temperature of the Sentinel's outer shell was not constant. It had a very, very small pulse, a slight warming followed by a cooling. It happened once every 73 standard minutes exactly. It was like a heartbeat. He also saw a tiny, almost invisible shimmer that ran across its surface at the same time. It was a maintenance cycle. A system check. The Sentinel was not a statue. It was alive in its own way. It was doing its job over and over, waiting. The next day, Captain Day called another meeting. The mood was grim. "We are running out of time," Day said, his voice low. "The Galactic Union is sending another ship. If we can't get in, they will take over. They might even try to destroy the Sentinel. We need a solution now." Mirai shook her head. "Destroying it could cause the entire station to self-destruct. It's a terrible risk. Then give me a better idea," Day snapped. The room was silent. No one had a better idea. Jin, who was in the room to report on a life support system, cleared his throat. "Captain, may I speak?" Day looked at him surprised. Jin was rarely in these high-level meetings. "What is it, Jin?" "I've been reviewing the sensor data," Jin began, choosing his words carefully. "I don't think the Sentinel is a lock, and I don't think it's judging us." Mirai looked at him curious. "What do you think it is doing?" "I think it's lonely," Jin said. A few people in the room chuckled softly. So the comms officer looked embarrassed for him. "That's a sweet thought, Jin," Captain Day said, not unkindly. "But feelings won't get that door open." "I don't mean it has feelings, sir," Jin explained. "I mean it has a purpose. It was built to stand guard, to wait. Think about a guard on a very long watch. What does he need? He doesn't need someone to shout their name and title at him. He needs to know that the person coming is a friend. He needs to know that the person is there to relieve him, or to bring him supplies, or to check if he is okay." Mirai's eyes widened slightly. She was starting to see where he was going. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. "Everyone has been trying to talk to the Sentinel like it's a king or a computer," Jin said. "We've been using the Union's official protocols. We say, 'We are the Galactic Union, we are peaceful, let us in.' But the Sentinel doesn't care about unions or peace. It cares about the station. It's a maintenance chief, and a good chief always listens to another technician." He pointed to the data on his data pad. "Look at this energy rhythm. It's a diagnostic cycle. It's checking its own systems. It's been doing this for millions of years. Something must be getting worn out. Something must need fixing." Captain Day was skeptical, but he was also desperate. Mirai looked from Jin to the captain, a new hope on her face. "Captain," she said, "what if he's right? What if we've been asking the wrong question all this time?" Day looked at Jin for a long moment. He saw a simple man in a simple work uniform, not a scientist or a soldier. He saw the man who kept the air clean and the lights on. He saw the man who fixed things. "Okay," the captain said finally. "We've tried everything else. What is your plan, technician?" Jin smiled a little. "I'm going to go over there. I'm not going to transmit any fancy messages. I'm just going to knock on the door and tell it why I'm really there." The bridge of the Starlight Heron was completely silent. Captain Day stared at Jin. Mirai looked at him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. So the comms officer looked like he thought Jin had gone crazy. "Knock," Captain Day finally said. The word sounded strange and small in the high-tech room. "You want to go out there and knock on it?" "Yes, sir," Jin said. His voice was calm. He was not a brave man in the way soldiers are brave. He was confident in the way a good technician is confident. He knew machines. It's the most basic way one machine lets another machine know it's there. A physical signal. Mirai stepped closer. But its defenses. The energy field. It vaporized our best probe. "I'm not a probe," Jin replied. "And I won't be carrying a laser drill. I'll be carrying this." He held up his standard-issue tool harness. It was filled with wrenches, sonic drivers, and diagnostic scanners. "I'm not going as a conqueror or a scientist. I'm going as a repairman." Captain Day rubbed his forehead. The idea was ridiculous. It was the most unscientific, simple-minded plan he had ever heard. And yet, nothing else had worked. The Galactic Union ship was only a few days away. They were out of options. "Explain it to me again," Day said, sitting back in his chair. "Why would this work?" Jin took a deep breath. "Think of the Sentinel not as a lock, but as an old automated house. The owners are gone. It's been empty for 1,000,000 years. You've been shouting at the front door. I am a famous historian. Let me in to study your furniture. But the house doesn't care about historians. It's programmed to keep strangers out." He pointed a finger towards the image of the silent, dark station on the main screen. "But every house needs upkeep. Pipes rust. Wires fray. So the house also has a program for the maintenance man. The maintenance man doesn't shout his name. He doesn't need to. He walks up, gives a familiar knock, and says, "Maintenance check." The house recognizes the ritual. It lets him in because it needs him. Mirai's eyes were shining. "The ritual?" "The sequence. Jin, you might be right. We've been trying to prove we are worthy of its knowledge. We never tried to prove we are useful to its existence." Captain Day looked from Mirai's excited face to Jin's steady one. He let out a long, slow breath. "Okay," he said. "One chance. You get one attempt. But the moment that energy field flares up, you pull back. Is that clear? I'm not losing a crew member to this knocking idea." "Understood, Captain," Jin said. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Jin went to the suit-up room. He did not put on a heavy combat EVA suit. He chose a light utility rig. It was more flexible, built for working in tight spaces. He checked the oxygen supply in the thruster pack. He made sure his tool harness was securely attached to his hip. Mirai met him at the airlock. "Jin," she said, her voice serious. "Be careful. We are all relying on you." "I'll be fine," Jin said. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "It's just a machine, and all machines have a purpose. I just need to show it that my purpose aligns with its own." The outer airlock door opened. Jin was floating in the blackness of space. The Nexus station filled his entire view. It was a giant, silent city of metal and strange lights. And there, in the center, was the Sentinel. It looked even bigger and more imposing from here. He pushed a button on his thruster pack. A small jet of gas pushed him forward. He moved slowly, carefully across the empty space between the ship and the station. The only sound was his own breathing inside his helmet. On the bridge of the Starlight Heron, everyone watched the main screen. It showed a view from a camera on Jin's shoulder. They could see the Sentinel growing larger and larger. Sue gripped the edge of his console. "Its energy readings are normal." "No change yet. Keep monitoring," Captain Day said, his voice tense. "The second you see a power spike, you pull him back, Sue." Jin flew closer. He could now see the fine details on the Sentinel's black shell. It was covered in intricate patterns like carvings worn smooth by time. He aimed for a spot near its base, a large, flat section of plating that looked like a thigh. He was now within the range where the energy shield had always appeared before. He held his breath. Nothing happened. No shield. No psychic message. The Sentinel remained perfectly still. "He's inside the defensive perimeter," Sue announced, his voice filled with shock. "The Sentinel is not reacting." On Jin's camera feed, the crew watched as he reached out with his gloved hand. He made a fist and knocked 3 times on the Sentinel's leg plating. Clank, clank, clank. The sound was dull and metallic, transmitted through the contact between his glove and the alien metal. It was the simplest sound imaginable. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence felt heavier than before. Then a familiar pressure began to build in their minds. The Sentinel was waking up. Access denied. The thought was there, but it felt different, softer. There was no violent push. It was more like a question. This was the moment. Jin switched his suit's comm to an open channel, so his voice would carry through the vacuum to any receiver the Sentinel might have. He did not shout. He did not use a complex code. He used the simple, clear words he had planned. "Maintenance check," Jin said. The words hung in the silence of space. On the bridge, no one dared to breathe. They watched the screen, waiting for the Sentinel to lash out to swat this tiny, buzzing insect away. But it didn't. Instead, something impossible happened. A seam appeared on the Sentinel's torso. It was a perfect, straight line that had been invisible before. The line glowed with a soft blue light. Then, with a deep, grinding sound that vibrated through Jin's boots, a section of the Sentinel's armor began to move. It was a panel, about the size of a door, sliding sideways into the body of the giant machine. Behind it was a dark opening, filled with a complex web of glowing crystals and pulsating energy conduits. A soft golden light spilled out, illuminating Jin's stunned face. Sue was the first to break the silence on the bridge. His voice was a whisper of pure awe. He's in." Jin stood before the open panel in the Sentinel's chest. The golden light from inside was warm, not harsh. It revealed a landscape of technology that was nothing like the clean wires and circuits of his ship. This was a jungle of glowing crystal fibers and thick, clear tubes carrying pulses of liquid light. The air that whispered out was dry and carried a smell like old stone and ozone. On the bridge of the Starlight Heron, the silence was broken by a wave of excited voices. He did it. By the stars, he actually did it, Sao yelled, his earlier anxiety replaced by pure exhilaration. Captain Day leaned forward, his eyes wide. What is that? An access port? A weapons system? Mirai, what are we looking at? Mirai was studying the feed from Jin's helmet cam, her scientist's mind racing. It's not a control interface. Look at the layout. Those crystal lattices look like neural pathways, and those fluid conduits. That's a hydraulic system for movement. Captain, this isn't its brain. This is its torso. Jin didn't find a keypad. He found its service panel. Inside his helmet, Jin heard the chatter, but he tuned it out. His whole world had shrunk to the open panel in front of him. This was a machine, and it had let him in to do a job. Okay, he murmured, more to himself than to the crew listening in. Let's see what you need. He unclipped a small handheld scanner from his tool harness. It was a simple device, used for finding power leaks and faulty connections in the ship's systems. He switched it on and slowly passed it over the opening. The scanner chirped and whirred, its screen filling with data he could understand. I'm reading a major drop in hydraulic pressure in the secondary actuator network, Jin reported, his voice calm and professional. There's a flow restriction. A valve is stuck. It's causing a feedback loop that's stressing the primary power converter. On the bridge, Mirai stared in disbelief. He's diagnosing it. He's treating a million-year-old Guardian machine like a faulty water pump. Can he fix it? Day asked, his voice low. I don't know, Mirai admitted. We have no idea what their technology is based on. One wrong move could trigger a catastrophic failure. Jin didn't think about catastrophic failure. He saw a problem he knew how to solve. A stuck valve needed to be freed. He put the scanner away and selected a long, slender tool from his belt. It was a sonic probe, designed to vibrate at frequencies that could break up corrosion or unstick mechanical parts without causing damage. I'm going to try and free the valve, Jin said into his comm. The material is unknown, so I'll start with a low frequency. He carefully inserted the probe into the maze of crystals and tubes. He had to be gentle. It was like performing surgery. He found the problem area, a junction where several fluid conduits met. A crystalline valve was frozen in a half-open position. He activated the probe. A low, almost inaudible hum filled the air. He watched the scanner readout. The pressure was not changing. It's not working, Sue said, his voice tense. The pressure is still low. Patience, Jin said softly. He adjusted the frequency slightly. It's been stuck for a very long time. It needs a little persuasion. He moved the probe, applying the vibrations to different points around the valve. He talked to the machine as he worked, the same way he talked to the stubborn air recyclers on the ship. Come on now. You've been holding this position for ages. You can let go now. Just a little bit. The crew on the bridge listened to his quiet, steady monologue. It was a strange sound in the tense atmosphere of the bridge. There was no fear in his voice. There was only focus and a kind of respect for the machine. Then a deep, grinding sound echoed from inside the Sentinel. It was a sound of great strain. Jin, pull back, Captain Day ordered. It's going to rupture. But Jin held his ground. No, sir. That's not a rupture. That's it moving. He was right. The grinding sound was followed by a sharp crack. On his scanner, the hydraulic pressure suddenly spiked, then stabilized at a perfect normal level. The fluid in the conduits began to flow smoothly, the pulses of light becoming strong and regular. A wave of relief, warm and satisfying, seemed to flow out of the open panel. It wasn't a psychic message. It was a feeling, like a sigh from a creature that had been in pain for a long time. Valve is clear. Flow is nominal, Jin reported, a small smile on his face. But that's not the only issue. The power converter is still stressed. It's overheating. He put the sonic probe away and took out a different tool. It was a canister of conductive coolant gel, used for spot cooling overheated circuits. He located the power converter, a large blocky crystal that was glowing with an angry red light instead of a calm blue. He applied the gel carefully, coating the hot crystal. A hissing sound filled the air as the gel instantly vaporized, carrying the heat away. The angry red glow of the crystal faded, cooling to a steady, peaceful blue. The change in the Sentinel was immediate and obvious. The oppressive, silent presence that had weighed on them for weeks simply vanished. The machine, which had always felt like a cold, unyielding wall, now felt calm. The golden light from its open panel seemed to brighten, becoming friendlier. Jin finished his work, putting his tools back on his harness. He gave the inside of the panel a satisfied nod. "All done," he said. "You should be running more smoothly now." He expected the panel to close. He expected the Sentinel to return to its silent vigil, perhaps with a new understanding. It did something else. The Sentinel, the unmoving guardian, shifted its weight. It was a slow, deliberate movement that made the entire station hull vibrate. One of its massive arms, which had been resting at its side, slowly rose. It didn't make a threatening gesture. Instead, it pointed with one giant articulated finger towards the massive, seamless airlock that had been the focus of all their efforts. Then, with a deep groaning sound of ancient machinery waking from a long sleep, the great airlock began to open. A hissing sound filled the air as the gel instantly vaporized, carrying the heat away. The angry red glow of the crystal faded, cooling to a steady, peaceful blue. The change in the Sentinel was immediate and obvious. The oppressive, silent presence that had weighed on them for weeks simply vanished. The machine, which had always felt like a cold, unyielding wall, now felt calm. The golden light from its open panel seemed to brighten, becoming friendlier. Jin finished his work, putting his tools back on his harness. He gave the inside of the panel a satisfied nod. "All done," he said. "You should be running more smoothly now." He expected the panel to close. He expected the Sentinel to return to its silent vigil, perhaps with a new understanding. It did something else. The Sentinel, the unmoving guardian, shifted its weight. It was a slow, deliberate movement that made the entire station hull vibrate. One of its massive arms, which had been resting at its side, slowly rose. It didn't make a threatening gesture. Instead, it pointed with one giant articulated finger towards the massive, seamless airlock that had been the focus of all their efforts. Then, with a deep groaning sound of ancient machinery waking from a long sleep, the great airlock began to open. The sound was the most beautiful thing Mirai had ever heard. It was the deep, resonant groan of metal that had not moved in millennia. On the main screen of the bridge, they watched through Jin's camera as the giant, seamless door of the Nexus station began to part. It did not slide sideways or upwards. It irised open like the petals of a metal flower waking to the sun. Beyond it was not darkness, but a soft, welcoming light. For a moment, no one on the bridge spoke. They could only stare. The goal they had worked towards for so long was now right there. An open door. Sue was the first to find his voice. "The airlock." "It's open. It's really open." He turned to Captain Day, his face full of wonder. "The Sentinel did it. It opened the door for him." Captain Day stood up from his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "All teams, listen up. Prepare for initial exploration. Mirai, you have the lead. Security team, you are on escort duty. I want full environmental scans before anyone sets foot inside." The ship, which had been quiet and tense for weeks, suddenly burst into activity. Voices chattered over the comms as people rushed to their stations. But Jin was still standing there in front of the open service panel on the Sentinel. He watched as the panel slid shut with a soft hiss, sealing itself perfectly once more. The ancient machine was whole again. Then it did one more thing. A beam of light shot out from a crystal on its forehead, projecting a complex three-dimensional map into the space in front of Jin. It was a schematic of the entire Nexus station. A glowing line, friendly and green, snaked through the labyrinth of corridors and chambers, leading directly to a large, central room that pulsed with a soft light. "It's a map," Jin said, his voice filled with awe. "It's giving us a map." On the bridge, Mirai gasped. "It's not just letting us in. It's guiding us. It's showing us where to go." This was beyond her wildest dreams. They wouldn't be blindly searching through a dangerous ruin. The station itself was offering them a tour. Soon, Mirai and a small team of scientists were suited up and floating across the void towards Jin. They passed him at the entrance, their faces full of excitement and gratitude. "Jin, you incredible man," Mirai said over the comms, her voice shaking with emotion. "You didn't just open the door. You made a friend." Jin just nodded. He watched them disappear into the brightly lit corridor of the station. He felt a strange sense of pride, but he also felt his job was done. He was a maintenance man, not an explorer. He turned to go back to the ship. "Jin," Captain Day's voice came over his private channel. "Where are you going?" "Back to the ship, Captain," Jin replied. "To check on the life support systems. I was in the middle of a diagnostic when all this started. There was a moment of silence from the bridge. Then Day spoke again, his voice firm but respectful. "Negative, Jin. I need you to suit up and join the exploration team." Jin was surprised. "Sir, I'm just a technician." "Exactly," Captain Day said. "And it was the technician who got us in. That machine trusts you. I want you inside with Mirai. If there are more doors or more sentinels, you are the only one who knows how to talk to them. Consider this a new assignment." Back on the bridge, Day looked at Sue. "The kid was right all along. We were trying to use a master key on a door that just needed a friendly knock." Sue smiled. "It seems so, Captain." Inside the Nexus, the air was clean and cool. The walls were made of the same polished, dark material as the Sentinel, but they glowed from within. Mirai and her team moved slowly, following the green path on the map Jin had received. They scanned everything, their instruments going wild with the amount of data. When Jin caught up to them, they were standing before a large circular door. It was covered in more of the intricate carvings. "It was closed. Scanners show the room behind is huge," one of the scientists said. "Probably the main archive. But the door won't open. There's no handle, no control panel." Mirai turned and saw Jin. A look of relief washed over her face. "Jin, thank you for coming. It seems we need your special touch again." Jin floated towards the door. He didn't have his scanner out. He didn't need it. He looked at the door, and he remembered the feeling of the Sentinel. This was not a hostile door. It was a door that was waiting for the right person. He didn't knock this time. He simply placed his hand flat on the cool, smooth surface of the door. He spoke in a calm, clear voice. "Maintenance check." For a second, nothing happened. Then the carvings on the door began to glow with a soft blue light. The light flowed through the patterns like water. With a deep, resonant chime, the circular door split down the middle and slid silently into the walls. The room beyond took their breath away. It was a vast circular chamber. The walls were not walls, but giant screens showing star maps and galaxies. In the center of the room, floating in mid-air, were crystals of every size and color slowly rotating, each one pulsed with a soft inner light. It was a library of light and knowledge. Mirai floated into the room, her eyes wide. It's all here, the history of a universe. Everything they knew. The other scientists spread out, their scanners humming, carefully recording everything they saw. Jin stayed near the door, watching. He saw a smaller, darker crystal floating off to the side. It was not pulsing with the others. It looked dormant. Without thinking, he reached out and touched it. The moment his finger made contact, the crystal flared to life. A holographic image appeared in the air above it. It was a schematic, not of the station, but of the Sentinel itself. It showed the internal systems, the hydraulic flow, the power converters. It highlighted the very valve he had fixed and the power converter he had cooled. A wave of warmth and gratitude, clear and unmistakable, flowed from the crystal into his mind. The Sentinel had not forgotten. The station had not forgotten. He was not just a visitor who had been let in. He was the repairman who had answered the call. And in this silent, ancient place, that was a title worth more than any other. The discovery inside the Nexus station was beyond anything the crew of the Starlight Heron could have imagined. For days, Mirai and her team worked in the Central Archive, the great library of light. They did not touch anything. They only observed and recorded. The floating crystals contained not just information but experiences. They could see the history of the galaxy through the eyes of the long-vanished builders. They learned about stars that had died and new planets being born. It was a gift of knowledge given freely. Jin did not spend much time in the archive. His work was different. While the scientists were lost in the wonders of the past, he was busy in the present. He walked the glowing hallways of the station with a new purpose. The station, through the silent communication of the Sentinel, had shown him its needs. A light panel here was flickering, its power connection weak. A filter in an air circulation unit was clogged with fine, ancient dust. A conduit in a lower level was leaking a small amount of thermal energy. These were small things, the kind of wear and tear that happened over millions of years. To the brilliant scientists, they were invisible. To Jin, they were a list of chores. He carried his tool harness everywhere. He fixed the flickering light by reseating a crystal connection. He cleared the clogged filter and reset the airflow. He sealed the leaking conduit with a patch of thermal gel from his kit. He worked quietly, methodically. He was not exploring history. He was taking care of a home. The station responded to his care. The lights seemed to burn a little brighter. The air felt fresher. The low, constant hum of the station systems became smoother, more content. It was a feeling that everyone noticed, even if they didn't understand it. One evening, as the crew gathered for a meal in the ship's mess hall, the mood was light and happy. They were celebrating their success. "We've transmitted the first data packets to the Galactic Union," Captain Day announced, a wide smile on his face. "They are stunned. They have canceled the other ship. The Nexus is ours to study. This is the greatest discovery in history." Everyone cheered. They clapped each other on the back. They looked at Mireille with respect and admiration. Mireille stood up. "Thank you, everyone. But this victory does not belong only to me. We all played a part." She looked across the room and found Jin, sitting by himself in the corner, quietly drinking a cup of tea. "But there is one person here without whom we would still be outside looking in." She walked over to Jin. The whole room became quiet, watching her. "Jin," she said, her voice clear and strong, "you did what all our technology and all our knowledge could not. You saw the truth. You saw a machine that needed help, not a lock that needed picking. On behalf of every scientist here, thank you." The mess hall erupted in applause. People whistled and cheered. Jin looked down, a little embarrassed by the attention. He just nodded and gave a small smile. Captain Day came over and put a hand on Jin's shoulder. "She's right, son. You have a unique talent. I'm promoting you to Chief of Station Relations. Your job is to make sure our new friend stays happy." Jin looked up. "Thank you, Captain. But I don't need a new title. I just want to keep doing my job. I like being the maintenance man." Day laughed and shook his head. "Fine, you can keep your old title too. But you're getting a pay raise." A few days later, Jin was outside again, checking an external sensor array that the Sentinel had pointed out was misaligned. As he was tightening a bolt, a shadow fell over him. He turned and looked up. The Sentinel was standing there, looking down at him. It was still huge and powerful, but it no longer felt threatening. It felt like a watchful friend. Slowly, the great machine bent its massive head. It was a deliberate, respectful gesture. It held the pose for a moment, its dark, polished surface reflecting the distant stars. Then it straightened up and returned to its post by the main airlock. It resumed its vigil, standing guard once more. But now, it was not guarding the station from them. It was guarding the station with them. It was guarding the scientists inside who were learning its history, and the maintenance man outside who was ensuring its future. Jin understood. He gave the Sentinel a small, respectful nod of his own. Then he went back to tightening the bolt. The work was not glamorous. It was not the stuff of great historical discoveries. But as he looked at the vast ancient station and its silent, loyal guardian, he knew it was important. Humanity had not conquered the Nexus. They had, through a simple act of kindness and a willingness to do the work, been allowed to help. And for Jin, that was better than conquering anything.